Hello, my dear friends. My name is Dr. Caffey, and I am the lead consultant at Caffeine Associates. Caffeine Associates is a one-stop HR shop. In the previous episodes of Performance Management Systems Information Series, we discussed the dilemma of performance management systems in developing countries, how important it is to implement these systems, and yet how far these countries lag behind in its implementation. We also learned that informal performance management is at least 2000 years old, found in practice in China, and informal student evaluation is about 1200 years old, found in Fez, Morocco. We also discussed science practice gap, which basically meant the divide between corporate managers and academia. This divide is responsible for incorrect implementations of performance management systems across the globe, particularly so in developing countries. Even in the developed countries, this divide between corporate and academic world has destroyed the most important aspect of the performance management process, which is the strategic approach towards future performance. This future performance, in many cases, is compromised due to excessive focus on performance appraisal, which is retrospective in nature. Performance management process focuses more on the future, more on development, more on improvement, and more on recognition rather than reprimand, penalties, and the past. Though a part of the performance management process might be used to determine the compensation components like variable pay and salary increases. However, the development component of the performance management process is extremely important, and it is this component which plays an integral role in making the performance management process a strategic business partner in developing a high performing business unit. Performance management process ensures and aligns the individual employee behaviors with the organizational values and competency framework. The competency framework defines the ideal behaviors required to deliver the objectives as well as further the agenda and the reputation of the organization. These behaviors vary with the level of employee in the organizational hierarchical structure. For example, a senior manager will have to develop and lead a team, whereas a junior individual contributor may not need this skill, as he is not required to develop and lead the team. Most of the global companies give equal weightage to what and how part of the performance management process, which means achieving the business results is most important. But how these results were achieved is also equally important. This how part is primarily the behaviors and the set of values the organization is proud of. These behaviors and values shape the culture of the organization, and culture is the DNA of the organization. This is why performance management process, if done right, can change the DNA of the organization for betterment. And if done incorrectly, it can destroy the very DNA of which the organization is proud of or of which the organization stands for. The competency and values are broken down into observable and actionable factors, and then further broken down into desirable and non-desirable behaviors. This exercise is extremely important because the employees need help in understanding the required behaviors they need to exhibit or demonstrate while running after achieving their business objectives or goals. Embedding values and desired behaviors is the most important outcome of any performance management process. This creates alignment across the organization about what is expected in terms of required behaviors and business objectives. Required behaviors define the future outcome. This is why the performance management process is futuristic in character versus performance appraisal, which focuses primarily on the past. The sole reason why performance appraisal is so notorious among the corporate world is because of its focus on what had gone wrong in the past instead of what we can achieve in the future together. Every human being is very unique in character, yet there are many similarities in human nature across the globe. Each of us needs safety, social connections, sense of belonging, etc., as proposed by American psychologist Abraham Maslow in his 1943 paper, A Theory of Human Motivation. The same applies to performance management process. If we want it to be successful, we need to see how does it connect with the humans at a subconscious level. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a Genevan philosopher, writer, and composer. His political philosophy influenced the progress of the Age of Enlightenment throughout Europe, as well as aspects of the French Revolution and the development of modern political, economic, and educational thought. He writes in his paper on social contracts published in 1762 about the natural human kindness and the emotional foundation of ethics. This essentially means that we humans are psychologically inclined to reciprocate the good deeds done to us, and we are emotionally inclined towards kindness and ethics. Performance management process needs to create a powerfully positive psychological contract with employees where employees are taken as humans, building on human psychology rather than a mechanized paper based construct enslaving him in corporate chains through fear. Jean-Jacques Rousseau became the most famous revolutionary when he said, I prefer liberty with danger than peace with slavery. He became even more famous when he said, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. According to him, human beings enter into psychological contracts which are promissory and reciprocal. If we try and understand him in light of the above quotes and picture him in context of performance management process, it will be much more relevant. But doing so will raise important questions which have remained unanswered so far. So, what questions Jean-Jacques Rousseau would have asked if he were present when Frederick Winslow Taylor published his Principles of Scientific Management Theory in 1911? These questions could have been: how do we connect with the employees at a subconscious level? How do we create a powerfully positive psychological contract with employees? To answer the above questions, we only need to understand Jean-Jacques Rousseau a little better in context of performance management process. Performance management process has to promise something in return of something to create a powerfully positive psychological contract. In other words, in corporate words, the employee, the organization must give something in return to get something in return. This will create a construct which will be based on mutual obligations and deliverables. The obligations and deliverables on the part of an employee, which are fairly simple. These fairly simple deliverables on the part of an employee are primarily five. Number one, deliver on the required behaviors of the organization. Number two, uphold, live and breathe the value system of the organization. Number three, deliver on the desired business objectives of the organization. Number four, deliver on the commitment to the organization. And number five, deliver on the expectations of the organization. These deliverables and the obligations on the part of the employee are fairly simple and straightforward. The reason for this simplicity is because the wealth of research available for the success of the organization. However, it is not so simple and straightforward when it comes to the organization. The reason for this complexity is the difficulty in ascertaining the factors employee wants as a return on the psychological contract. The lack of research on employee wants is the major factor contributing to the failure of the performance management processes worldwide. However, there are two theories which can help us in determining the employee wants from a good performance management program. While these two theories were proposed in a different context, however, they can be used to some extent in creating a powerfully positive psychological contract for employees in an organization. Abraham Harold Maslow was an American psychologist who created Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a theory of psychological health predicated on fulfilling innate human needs in priority, culminating in self actualization. He first introduced the concept of a hierarchy of needs in his 1943 paper titled A Theory of Human Motivation, and again in his subsequent book Motivation and Personality. This model is still very valid today. He said that each of us is motivated by needs. Our most basic needs are inborn, having evolved over tens of thousands of years. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs helps to explain how these needs motivate us all. Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that we must satisfy each need in turn. Starting with the first, we deal with the most obvious needs for survival itself.
Please follow Cafe Associates on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn.